when customers, they are looking for restaurants, one of the first search engine is Instagram. We did a research from Monogic before. We have the top 3 channels. So from Google to OpenRice to Instagram, people are very picture driven. So when they have to look for a restaurants, they might also go on the restaurant's Instagram, look for what is being tagged and look for the actual authentic experience. And that's how influencer marketing is coming from.
Hello, welcome to Monogic's podcast. I'm Kieran, and this is Alexandra, founder of Monogic. Today we're talking about influencer marketing and F&B. We're really lucky to have Alexandra's input. She's been on both sides of the industry.
Well, we both are.
Some of us more so than others.
Yeah.
So looking forward to having your input on how restaurants can leverage influencers to market themselves.
I was an influencer since I was in university. So like back then in university, it was still pretty new for the term influencer. So I was starting my own website, trying to run my own social media account. At first, I just start by making blog articles to teach people to do ketogenic diet, like making recipes. And then eventually I started doing more like lifestyle brands, beauty brands, and also for some restaurants as well. And then eventually I have you joining me. So we've been going to quite a few at restaurants, tasting or the campaigns as an influencer. So I think it's quite nice to see it from that end, because definitely help us to be a bit more, to think from another angle when we're starting our own like agency doing our influencer marketing. For me, I always think influencer marketing is a branding move rather than a direct sales. So we always have clients asking us, when it comes to influencer marketing, they will say, oh, how many sales it brings to me. Well, and unfortunately, it didn't bring sales to you immediately. But the thing is, having these influencers sharing their own authentic experience, it definitely helps your brands, because when customers, they are looking for restaurants, one of the first search engine is Instagram. We did a research from Monogic before. We have the top 3 channels. So from Google to OpenRice to Instagram, people are very picture driven. So when they have to look for restaurants, they might also go on the restaurant's Instagram, look for what is being tagged and look for the actual authentic experience. And that's how influencer marketing is coming from.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned how social media influencers don't necessarily drive purchases like other industries would, like e-com or something, right?
I mean, like direct sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like more like a touch point, an additional visibility in it, for the average customer. So, we always say like it's multiple touch points that actually drive a customer. I think it's the same with any industry you go in. You'll see that, the attribution models are not just direct. They're not just last touch anymore. They're all data driven, and they all share the attribution accordingly. And it's the same for restaurants, I think, right? So how do restaurants then set up these partnerships with the influencers in the first place?
Well, I mean, there's a few stages, but I mean, to start is first to understand how the community looks like. I think one thing that I always found clients asking is, they sometimes, let's say take Hong Kong market as an example, they sometimes will ask, oh, can I have this particular group of like 20, 30 influencers? But the thing is, when we're looking for influencers, apart from looking on the followers, we also need to look at the engagement rate. I've seen some very interesting research showing to me that micro influencers actually have better engagement.
Is that right?
Yeah. So let's say if you're looking for influencers having a few thousand followers, they probably have high engagement rate than people have like over 10K plus.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the first thing, like looking at the numbers. Numbers doesn't necessarily mean it's the right people. Like if I put another example, okay, you're looking for an influencer which have 100K followers, doing a lot of restaurant content around Asia, for example. But that person do a lot of fine dining restaurants, like Michelin starred, World 50 Best restaurants. But you are promoting your casual eatery, maybe a pizza place. then it doesn't necessarily work, because you are targeting to that, you are actually promoting your restaurants to 100K followers, but that 100K followers probably are not all from Hong Kong, or they are probably not all looking for the same interest as you. But you are spending money as a restaurants, and covering all the food costs, and also even paying sponsor fee for the influencers, but you are not necessarily targeting the right thing. I think this way is kind of similar to when you're placing social media ads. When you're placing social media ads, you are actually targeting certain behavior of the audience, but when you're doing influencers marketing, you are actually doing the exact same thing. But I think this is something that people sometimes neglect.
Right. So you mentioned about, if you engage like a really big influencer, say, obviously not all of that 100K are going to be relevant to your restaurant. They're not going to be around the area, or they're not going to be in the right, interest. What else do restaurants need to look for with, in an influencer, at the research stage before reaching out?
Yeah, if I'm going to look for an influencer for our clients, I think I would do a few things. First, looking at the followers, and then I will look into the engagement rate. For me, I'm actually more skeptical in terms of auditing the influencers. So our team will actually go into the post to check what kind of followers they're having, who likes the post, etc. And then afterwards, I will also dive deeper and look into, okay, what kind of restaurants this influencer been working with? Is it really matching our client's niche? Yes, so we'll use the word niche, right? So is it the right content they've been creating that exactly matching the client? And then afterwards, if I think, okay, it check all the boxes, then we can reach out to the influencers and invite them to work with us. So that's the basic round. But I mean, of course, sometimes when clients have specific needs, let's say if you do a Valentine's Day campaign, we need to look for a couple influencers, then I think it's another story.
So it's obviously not just about, is this influencer relevant to this specific restaurant or this brand, but also this campaign. So there's like, multiple levels. You also touched on something interesting there as well, is about how you go into each of the followers and you go into the engagement, to look for authenticity, I guess, which I think is part of a bigger issue.
Well, I think this is something that people don't really touch on, right? Like, there are many influencers. There are many influencers with real followers, but there are also many influencers with fake followers. So this is something that, like, I'm always being upfront to a client. Like, you may be seeing a lot of influencers out there, but you need to also see if they're authentic, because let's say if they have 10K followers but 5K are fake, you're actually investing your money into 50% fake audience. It doesn't necessarily work unless you think that having influencer campaign is more about having nice photos and having nice interaction, then that's another story. But then if you are also looking to authentically reach out to their audience, I think looking for auditing the audience is quite important.
For sure. Yeah, so I think you mentioned about like fake followers. I think this is one of the biggest issues I think the industry is facing, right?
Yeah.
It's around authenticity, because a lot of it is easy to manipulate. What else can be done, I suppose? What does the future look like of this industry, maybe?
Yeah, I think briefly we touched on micro-influencers.
Yeah.
I think the future is will be restaurants or clients in general will be definitely looking for more micro-influencers. And if you see from other industry like e-commerce, you definitely can see that they've been using a lot more micro-influencers around the world. I actually watched a pretty interesting videos on YouTube about Daniel Wellington.
Okay.
Their initial success is not using big influencers, but using a lot of micro-influencers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think this definitely can apply to restaurants. We do receive, some feedback previously about, okay, I'm using the same group of influencers, and the results is not good, because when I seeing their content, I know exactly they are getting paid to do so. So having a mix of influencers and finding influencers that genuinely connect with your brand, I think is the first, like the most important thing. And then looking to the engagement, is it really authentic, really connect with your brand, would definitely be the second thing we look for. And I think the future would definitely be micro influencers, because they are producing more authentic experience, they are having higher engagement, and you have a bigger pool to choose from.
All very good points. So obviously you also mentioned about like showing an authentic experience, authenticity of the content. You said it was kind of obvious when certain influencers are being paid to actually post about this stuff. What can, a restaurant do to kind of ensure like a more authentic kind of, experience or content, or is there anything that can be done, or is it, completely in the influencer's hands?
Well, I mean, back to the basic, right? Like influencers is about creativity.
Right.
I was an influencer before. It's about creativity. If you, as a client using influencers and you give a very restricted brief, okay, I need exactly like that. I need like you do a post. So back then, like just reference, not restaurants, but just my reference is, okay, I need to do an ad for, let's say, a bottle of wine. But I need to post in a certain way. I need to film the video in a certain way. Then that's not authentic, because let's say you find 100 influencers. They do the exact same thing. Does it really give a good experience? Or if I'm following this influencer, I'm just going to swipe away because I know exactly it's just an ad. I don't think people on social media actually mind about ads. I mean, for direct ads, I think they do have some like concern. Like when it comes to sponsor, I probably would just swipe away because there's too many sponsor ads, let's be honest. But when it comes to an influencer's content, if it's creative and it's involved ad and sponsor content, it doesn't necessarily matter. I think one good example is if I go on YouTube channel, I've actually follow a lot of like business or like entrepreneur podcast. Sometimes they will put some of their content, their sponsorship, VPN ads that they always put in. It don't necessarily matter if they do it in a creative way. So I think one thing that we also have to think of, like we are partnering with influencers, but influencers are also creative we are working with. I think we should respect and provide certain flexibility for them to create their own content. And by then, you actually will get benefit as well, because they are producing some really authentic content for your brand and with their own twist. And you probably will have higher engagement and it's more impression for your audience.
Right. Yeah. So that provides twofold value, I suppose, for the restaurants, right? They're getting not only visibility to that influencer's audience, but also then the content they produce. So I guess that's something that should also be briefed, right? It's something that they should be putting inside the pitch, inside the sort of agreement with that influencer about like, who gets ownership of that content and things. Is there kind of anything else that, restaurants should maybe look out for or prepare when engaging an influencer?
I think, I also want to touch on something about like the industry in general, like influencer industry.
Okay.
I think I used to also like work in agencies where I need to collaborate with, let's say, influencers in Asia or influencers in the world. And they always have their own like pitch deck. Like they have their own like presentation, their package, how much they're doing, their content. But in Hong Kong, we actually don't really see it. So most of the time, agency or restaurant clients need to take initiative to reach out to influencers. But I think actually it can be both way. And apart from influencers on social media, if I was an influencer previously, I use Instagram, I use Facebook, for example. But what else I can provide for my client? Maybe I can write a blog post for them. Maybe I can make a short videos. I think this is definitely something that I'm hoping in the future we will see more mutual, make the industry be more mature as well. And restaurants, I think what restaurants should also look at is, I think most of the time restaurant clients are quite busy with their day-to-day work. I'm just going to plug it in because I think if you look for an agency or if you look for a professional to audit for you, it can save a lot of your time. And I think, and to provide a clear brief, like you say, but at the same time also provide certain flexibility for the influencers is definitely important as well. Is there anything you want to add?
I think just, maybe just a comment on like the efficacy of influencer marketing, right? So I know you mentioned a lot about how the future may be in micro influencers, but I think also there's like the whole digital component, right? There's like a lot of different disciplines of marketing are moving towards performance orientation, right? They're trying to, there's agencies that will do like pay per result or things like that. And I think influencer marketing is no different, but I think there's still like a huge disconnect between, this third party data and the business, because the business is engaging the influencer and only the influencer can access their own performance data, right? But that's also owned by the platform. So there's like this huge disconnect. I think what there needs to be, and I think what is starting to happen, is that there are, starting to be tools that will bridge that gap, and they will, give brands the access to that performance data. So like the insights, say, from that influencer's specific posts. And particularly around what we're seeing a lot more as well on things like Instagram is like collaboration posts. So where two accounts are actually jointly posting together and it appears on both feeds. Obviously, any brand that does that is going to have insights into that post, right? They can see the performance. And so then you can start counting and measuring the reach and, engagements and you can kind of involve that a lot more into your reporting, and it's easier to quantify is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're headed as well.
Yeah, I think today we covered quite a lot about influencers. I think next time we definitely can dive in a bit deeper on, let's say, how to really effectively auditing for influencers, for example. And I mean, if our listener, our friends have any comments, any ideas about or what they want to learn about influencers, can definitely let us know as well. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.